Hello, welcome everybody to today's HR Huddle, our last HR Huddle of June, which is unbelievable. We hope you've been enjoying the start of summer here. And I have today a guest with me, Jana Cinnamon, who is the COO and partner at Abdo Myers here in Minneapolis. So we're both local here to Minneapolis. And I asked Jana to come and talk to us about everything talent, everything people, because she just got back from the CPAFMA, the CPA for Management Association conference. She's on the board of directors with them, and they just had their annual conference out in Maine. And like we've been talking about on the HR Huddle, everything is about people and everything is about talent. And Jana, I think that that's been the message that was loud and clear as you guys were planning the conference. And anything to say about the buzz that was there? And I know we'll get into some details, on some specific things that were raised, but anything about the buzz about it's all about people?
Yes, 100% all about the people. Everybody right now is talking about the capacity struggles, the shortage of talent, and the war for talent, and how do we find people? How do we keep people? That was far and away the big topic, and woven into that was this continued conversation around remote workers, hybrid workers, flexibility. Because certainly we know that is an attraction and retention strategy, but is it really here to stay? And how do we do it well? And, certainly some varying views on that, but plenty of conversation about how we do that going forward.
Yeah. Well, let's start there, because I think that's definitely, a topic. We were just talking about it as we're trying to connect here, and I'm trying to compete with all the people home on summer break. Most of the teenagers around here with my internet connection, and I can see there it goes again. So, the remote here to stay, but it is looking different. And how do we work in this hybrid blended environment and provide more flexibility and options, for our team members, I think is just huge. And so what were some of the takeaways that you had, from the conference and the discussions that you were in?
Yeah, I think, there's been such a wide range of how firms have handled things, right? There was a lot of the necessity at first, and then the decisions around how do we come back, or do we come back, and everything. And so while there still are some skeptics out there who feel like, being back in the office is the right way or the best way, the reality is, and it seems super clear, it's not even a competitive advantage anymore. It's that competitive imperative, right? Like we have to be doing it. That we know that if we post jobs that offer remote capabilities or flexible arrangements, you're going to get way more applicants than if you don't. We know that people are choosing flexibility as a priority for where they would want to work or where they would want to continue being employed over greater compensation. And so I think while there still is some of that hesitancy about the effectiveness of it at times, or what is most needed for employees, there's no doubt that we have to be doing it. So I think the conversation is now starting to shift less about should we do it or should we not do it, but how do we make sure that we're doing it effectively? How do we make sure we're successful in it? You're always going to have some of those skeptics, but we have to start shifting to the strategy of being better at it, because it's here to stay.
Yeah.
I think the reality of like the message that came through loud and clear was that managing people in a remote environment versus an in-person environment is all of the principles of it are the same.
Right.
It's the fact that we maybe weren't doing it very well before.
Right.
And it all is going to come back to intentionality here, right? Like before, I could walk by an employee in the hall and I could read their body language in a split second to see if they were having a good day or a bad day. I'm going to have to take some more, effort or intention to figure out how my employees are doing in a remote environment.
Yeah. And we're going to have to change our habits. And we've always said, even pre, pandemic, that managing a remote team makes us better managers because of that intentionality that you just said. We have to be more intentional about our communication. We have to be more intentional about check-ins because they're not just down the hall. We have to get better at reading body language and using video calls and doing, other things. And some of it is outside of our comfort zone or my own habit. And our mindset. I have to give up that I'm interrupting somebody by teamsing them, but I would go down the hall and tap them on the shoulder. It's so funny. Or I don't want to have a meal with you because it's weird to eat on Zoom, but I'll sit across from you in the lunchroom or at a restaurant. So a lot of it's just like mindset shifts that we have to make.
Right.
So
I even heard, some people talking about, well, it's one thing to recruit somebody who's worked remotely before, or they're experienced, or whatever that may be, that we'd be more open to doing that. But there's more hesitancy about people who've never worked remotely or who are coming right out of college or entry-level positions saying, well, no, they shouldn't really be working remotely yet. They need that in-office experience. And I think really what we need to do is figure out, how do we effectively prepare somebody to be a remote employee? We can't just expect that they come with that.
right.
How are we actually setting expectations, giving guidance on how to be effective in a remote environment, and not just expect that they bring that with them? People at all ages over the last couple of years have had to pivot and adjust, and our own children, our friends and family that have had to shift to online learning. We never, when we were in college, most of us did not have online learning, but now the generation coming into the workforce now, that's what they had to deal with. They had to learn how to go through their schooling in a more remote setting. Why can they not learn how to adapt to the workplace in a more remote setting? But again, I think that takes the intentionality to say, yes, maybe before you learned how to be an employee by coming into the office and sitting in a cube, and you started to learn some of the professional etiquette and norms and that sort of thing. We absolutely can do the same for people coming, into the profession today. They don't need to have had some previous experience to be eligible for remote or hybrid work.
Right. And that's one of the things, is to not have this requirement and all these policies and all this forms that people have to work, fill out to work remotely. It's just part of how we work. Mm-hmm. And then here's the expectations, and here's the training, and here's the tools, and here's what we're going to provide to be able to do that. So, and I'm sure return to office came up at the conference, or RTO that it's been called. I was happened to be out. I'm not usually out during rush hour, and I happened to be out on Friday at 5:00. And I was coming down, you'll be familiar with this, the 35E and 35W interchange in Burnsville, and the ramp was packed. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, first of all, thank you, God, that I get to work from home and I don't have to drive in this commute every single day. And then second, why do we have to do this? It was so, nice. That was one of the silver linings of the pandemic, is you get time back. It's better for our environment. There's like a whole bunch of arguments for it. But, this return to office and forcing people back, what was said about, that conversation?
Yeah, again, I think a mixed bag, right? There are still the people who would love to see more people coming into the office, and there's the people who say, no, we don't have to. I think where the conversation really mostly centered on was being back in the office for a purpose, right? Yeah. That if you're going to have people coming back, don't just set them at a desk with a computer doing the work that they could have done from home. Make sure that people are in having meetings together away from a screen, collaborating on things with flip charts on the wall, or sitting around a lunch table together, doing those things, not just replicating that, what we used to come to the office for before. Time in office now has to, again, that word intentional, be intentional and have a purpose and look different. You're going to really frustrate people if you're just bringing them into the office for an experience they could have, at home.
Or worse yet, we're all sitting. I want you in the office because I just want you here. But we're all on our, heads down on our laptops working.
Right. So. Well, and that's where I know it's come up too, of like, well, I think that they're doing other things when they're at home. Well, most of our people are not, working just 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Right.
or whatever, right? They are totally that integration of work and life. And yes, if I'm throwing a load of laundry from the washing machine to the dryer, that might just be a couple of minutes. But, you know, if I'm here in the office, I'm probably spending those few minutes doing
Chit-chatting,
something
talking,
as
doing,
well,
yes.
right? But again, it's like we have to have that longer term view and that change of what are we going to do to make sure that this profession is viable for the long term for people, right? If allowing somebody the flexibility to move their laundry during the workday means that they're going to feel like they can continue to be in a demanding profession for the long term, isn't that worth it?
Right.
You
Yep.
know, those trade-offs for sure. And you touched on it with the commute, right? I think we're hearing that from people too, is hey, that's an hour, you know, if it's a half hour each way, that's an extra hour that I either could be working or could be with my family.
Right.
And now with gas prices too, I
Oh,
know
yeah.
compensation is the struggle for everybody as well. That what do we do with compensation? Well, people are factoring that in. They say, hey, if I have to be driving to work every day, that increases my costs. And do I really have to be there? Make it worth my time and my money to do that.
Well, or driving to the clients. You know, I
Mhm.
factored in working in Edina at Abdo versus at the clients up in Maple Grove, and I live down here in Prior Lake. This is all Twin Cities language, everyone. But, you know, just it's like, okay, you know, how do we factor that in? Because I could get a lot of my work done before I go meet with the client. So I'm going to go back to your word intentionality. What can we do to work on the client without having to be in person, not have that commute, be ready for the client, be ready for our team meetings, and be more strategic about it. So I think that's all intertwined.
Yeah. I think the challenge for us all is we used to have some more of those defined moments of transition, right?
Yes.
If I was driving to the client, I would have that time where maybe maybe I'm just driving, but I'm mentally preparing for that
Yep.
meeting with the client. And now it's so easy for that to get pulled away and you
Yep.
squeeze in another meeting or whatever it may be. And so that's again in terms of how we are all successful in the remote environment is built using that time that we might have been, you know, commuting and using it for more
Transition.
valuable
Yeah.
transition.
Yeah. I love that. Exactly. Well, and I think part of this ties to business model shifts. I think that was another topic you said
Yeah.
that was pretty popular at the
Yes.
conference. So, what were some of the business model topics?
Yeah. So a lot of it being around, again, for the long term, we're not going to see future generations necessarily wanting to work 2,800 hours, 3,000 hours. And so a lot of it did get into, if that's not the reality, how do we have to staff our firms, structure our firms to remain profitable, to grow in revenue, but not have the expectation that our people are going to necessarily work those kind of hours. I know that there's firms that have initiatives in place, you know, they might call it Project 40 or Project 50 or whatever, where it's saying, hey, we don't want our people to average or work more than 40 hours a week or 50 hours a week, but how do we still remain, you know, profitable and revenue generating? And so looking at things like bringing in more dedicated administrative professionals that take off responsibilities that don't need to be done by trained accountants. Looking at that, you know, shifting, you know, work in other ways was a huge conversation, right? Whether it is administrative professionals, if it's people with any kind of background that could step in and lighten that load. Certainly looking at things like even having deferred compensation plans for non-partners. Are there other types of arrangements that could be made for people that you're looking to have stick around? Yeah, I think the capacity conversation in general was a big one, and I think is probably the big opportunity that we have as leaders within our firm is across the world we're over capacity, right? Like
Right.
it's everywhere. And so as leaders, we have to be thinking about how are we bringing that conversation to light, because our people are already talking about it. So if we're not talking about it, they feel like we're ignorant, or we don't care. And so to really place an emphasis on saying we do recognize capacity is a challenge. And here is all of the ways. It's got to be a multi-pronged approach that we're working to solve it, right? To say things like we are looking at finding administrative responsibilities that we can shift to non-accountants. We are looking at technology and we're looking at automation. We're looking at outsourcing or offshoring things. We're looking at removing certain types of clients and being very purposeful in the types of clients that we accept going forward, and doing a better job of, I think, that internal communications and internal PR to let people know our intentionality again as a firm to improve the situation. Because I think in our firms we're doing a lot of those things. We're talking about pulling clients, we're talking about hiring other types of professionals, or we're talking about it, but I don't think we always connect the dots for our people to say, we see capacity as a struggle. Here are the ways that we're focusing on improving it.
Yes. I think that is so important. I don't think that can be said enough, is the communication piece of it. We need to tell our people, first of all, acknowledge, what the issues are. Don't try to, hide them or pretend they're not there, or try to address them before we talk about them, because they know they're smart. You hire smart people. So they know, but also share with them what you're trying so that you can give them hope, but also they have ideas. And otherwise it's like, what are you all doing, leaders? And they're wondering. And so we need, and it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to say we tried that didn't quite work, or we crafted this new, administrative client service role, and here's what worked about it, here's what didn't work about it. So we're going to reshift it that way. It's going to emerge. It's going to, grow, offshoring, outsourcing, fractional employees. We're going to learn the first year. Number one is treat them like an employee and make sure we have onboarding and somebody dedicated to them. But we're going to learn what works, what doesn't work about that. And so let them learn with you, let them apply it, let them, see. I think that's just huge, that communication piece. I mean, gosh, we could talk a whole session on communication.
Yes. Yeah, I think we, as leaders, we're often living and breathing it and working within it day in and day out, right? We're trying to find these solves for things. We're talking to other firms about what they're doing. We're talking to vendors. We're talking to our consultants. We're doing these things, so we almost are sick of it ourselves. So then when we start to talk about it, we're like, well, don't they all know? Isn't this old news? And
no, they're not in those conversations.
They're not in those conversations, right? So we feel like we've talked about it ad nauseum, and they're like, oh, I had no idea.
Yes.
And so yeah, we could do a way better job, I'm sure, within the industry. I know in our own firm, and I'm sure other firms, that internal communication piece. And I think we do a great job at our firm of internal communication, but it comes up time and time again where I'm like, ooh, we didn't connect the dots for these people, right? Maybe we did talk about this, and we've talked about this, but we didn't help them understand how it was tied and connected. So they may have heard that we were exploring, an automation tool or something like that, but they didn't hear us explicitly say why we're doing this is because we know we can't find the people to get it done. And so this is a way that we are trying to alleviate the burden on you. And it's to help them understand the why in it and the benefit for them, because again, that's how they know that you care, right? We think it's a no-brainer. Yeah, the automation is going to alleviate the demands on them, but they don't always see it. That's what our intention is for it.
No, I think that's a really good point. We have to be explicit about why we're doing it so that they can see how it's going to benefit them, how it's going to benefit the client, why we're investing the money and the time in it. I mean, I think that's huge. And again, you're going to have a small group of people, and maybe a large group of people, I don't know, that are like, oh my gosh, thank goodness we're doing that. I am so interested in that, and I would love to be part of it. Great, bring them along. Yeah. If we're not talking about it, they don't know. They can't be part of, helping it out too. Yeah. One of the things that we've been talking about is how to create more connectedness So you could say engagement, motivating team members, etc. I just saw today we're launching in our team. We're all remote, optional lunch, snack, coffee, once a week, and it's optional. Whoever can come, and it's at different times of the day and different lengths of time. So an hour for lunch once a month, maybe, and then a coffee in the morning one week. So we're just trying to create that more connectedness, not just when we're busy working together or working on an engagement or something. And anything like that come up, from an engagement perspective, and how do we create more of that connectedness with people?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's the thing we know is key, right? We hear it with the skeptics about remote and hybrid work, right? Is, oh, people are just not as connected. And we hear it from, the people who are leaving our firms potentially, who say, hey, I don't feel as connected. And so we did talk, there was lots of small group discussion, larger group discussion for ideas. What are other firms doing? I don't know that I could rattle off a bunch of super unique ideas, but I think what stuck with me was you just have to try, right?
Yes.
And you have to offer things, and some things may be a bust and some things may be a success, and that there isn't a one size fits all. So you're actually better off being okay just doing lots of different things, and not getting stuck on one method of having, hey, what we do is always this to connect, because you're going to have the people who it's not their cup of tea to sit on a screen and have lunch together, but they would do trivia together,
Right.
or they would engage with a one-to-one discussion, but not a larger group thing. And so, that's really what my takeaway with it was. We've got to be offering multiple connection points in multiple different types of settings, right? Some people like to have fun together and like to laugh. Some people are like, hey, give me more of a purpose. It needs to have a purpose if I'm coming
Like a book
together.
study, or
Yes.
like we're doing something. Yes.
And so that's where it's finding different channels. And again, similar to our last conversation, be okay with if it doesn't go great and go, hey, we tried that. Let's do something different now. But I think similar to, I know we've had conversations before about, not everybody is necessarily going to be wired to be a really effective coach or mentor,
Right.
or, be that shepherd role. I know Convergence, you
Yep.
guys talk a lot about having shepherd for your
Yep.
sheep kind of thing. Not everybody has that wiring. And what I've found over the last couple of years is we have certain people in our firm who are absolutely connectors. Like they meet people, they suddenly know their whole life story, and really figuring out how to encourage those connectors to continue spending time doing that, to
Yes.
facilitate in that way. I have one employee who's just a fabulous connector. He meets new people and instantly has had figured out their hobbies, their, some off the wall thing that they did 5 years ago. I mean, he's got it all figured out, and he can find this way to go, oh, you should talk to so and so in the firm. They also, do fishing or whatever it could be. And for me to encourage him to say, how do we get more opportunities for you to be talking with people and
Right.
engaging with people, because there's value in that. Because I
Right.
think that also in this environment there's such the pull for productivity and all of that at times doing those connection things can feel everything but productive.
Mm.
And so to be really clear that there is the value in it, and to free those individuals up to create connections, because
Yes.
most people coming into a firm as a new employee especially are not going to figure out how to make where they should be connecting and who they
How
should
do
be.
you fit?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so yeah, that would probably, again, my advice of what I took from it was multiple options. You're not going to find a one size fits all. You're going to find things that some people love and some people loathe, and really, identifying, just as you identify your good coaches and things within your firm, identify your good connectors. Who are the people who help people find one another,
Yes.
make those introductions.
Well, and that creates that stickiness. How are we like to talk about how do we Velcro our people to us, right? And we got to create that stickiness, and connectors create stickiness. trying different things and finding places where people are connecting, having fun, socializing, learning something, whatever it might be, creates that stickiness. So finding those opportunities to create those connections, stickiness, pull people in, draw people in. There is value in that, and feels like it's not productive, but it is productive when we've got those relationships and we've got those people that we know we can count on. It's huge.
Well, and I think realizing we can assign somebody, hey, you're going to report to this person.
Yeah.
This person is your supervisor, and we think that that's it.
Yeah.
It's people need multiple connections within the firm. They
Yes.
need. We talk about it a lot on the client perspective, that we know for that stickiness with a client, we want to make sure that we know a few people at the client and that they
Yes.
know a few of our people.
Yes.
Similarly, with our staff, when they come in, we have to make sure that they don't only know their supervisor. We hope they certainly have a great relationship with their supervisor, but how do they get to know their peers? How do they get to know other people in the firm that might be at a similar life stage or have similar experiences? And so making sure that there is, again, some thought in how we get them connected with multiple people, not just feeling like that handoff to one is enough.
Yes. So important, because there's so many ways to do that. So, well, obviously, Jan and I could talk about this forever, but we are at time. So thank you so much, Jana, for coming and sharing some of the highlights from the CPA-FMA conference. I know the CPA-FMA website has a ton of resources out there. You can also find us in social media, comment, here on this post, and let us know if there's anything we can follow up with you on. But I just really appreciate you coming and sharing the insights today. I hope everybody has a great rest of your June, a happy and safe 4th of July. We will not be together next week for the HR Huddle. So have a wonderful 4th of July, celebrate our freedoms, and enjoy the time off. So thanks again.
Thanks, Tamera.
Thank you.